Hey everybody, welcome. So we're going to get started here in just a couple of minutes. My name is Stephen Torrance. I'm a board member of EFF-Austin, and this is the Surveillance Self-Defense Workshop. Before we get going, I would like to thank ACLU Texas for sponsoring the pizza and drinks for tonight. So I'll give them a round of applause. And I'd like to call up Rebecca to the stage to tell us a little bit more about ACLU Texas.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi everyone, my name's Rebecca. I work with the ACLU specifically on electronic privacy issues. We are in the middle of gearing up for the legislative session. If you didn't know, in Texas, the legislators only meet every 2 years for about 4 months. So we need you now. We need you January until about April to be testifying and be really active on this topic, in particular, whether it's encrypting your messages on your own for electronic privacy reasons, or going to the state legislature and making sure that legislation is passed through so that law enforcement agencies cannot, scoop out all of your cell phone data information without a warrant. All of these issues are incredibly important, and I gather that if you are here tonight, you must care slightly or tremendously about the topic. So I'm glad to see you all. I hope that you do have an opportunity to enjoy a slice of pizza or also a beverage. There's soda, Shiner, and also 2 varieties of wine. And lastly, there's a podium right outside where the exit is. It's a white, larger podium, and there's a sign-up sheet. If you are interested in this topic, I would love to work with you in the next few months. We are in the middle of drafting some legislation that would allow for electronic privacy in regard to law enforcement agencies needing a warrant to be able to use stingray devices, or also cell phone tower dumps, all of these things that right now there's really nothing on the books as far as the protocol for it. We don't know how long they keep everyone's information that's very confidential and pertinent. So it's really important that we act now and really set the stage for the rest of the nation. And Texas is great at doing that. So I hope that all the Texans here care as much as I do about the issue, and I would love to meet you after the meeting. The sign-up sheet again is right by the door, and I'll be sticking around, of course. But now we'll be, taking our privacy issues into our own hands and learning how to encrypt our messages. So that is very exciting. And I will next invite up John from the EFF Austin and also our Texas Electronic Privacy Coalition.
Thank you, Rebecca. Hello. I'm John Lebkowski. I'm president of EFF Austin. EFF Austin, which has been rocking and rolling since 1991. We're nostalgic for a time when a Stingray was a hot car. But tonight we're going to talk about Stingray proofing. I will mention that Capital Factory likes us to have a hard stop at 9. Is that right, Stephen? So we're going to try to run through the program. We have plenty of time for meaty stuff. But before we get started with that, we always like to open up for announcements. Does anybody here have an announcement or some kind of event to talk about? Stuff happening? Are we too close to the holidays? Yeah, Bon.
Don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Oh yeah, don't forget to vote tomorrow.
Or last week.
Okay.
In the runoff. Okay?
Don't forget to vote for Don Zimmerman and Laura Presley.
This has been a paid political announcement. Not really.
There's some freedom.
Any other announcements? All right. Okay, I just want to read you something here. It says, cryptography is a very hot issue in electronic civil liberties circles at the moment. After years of the deepest, darkest, never say anything military spook obscurity. Whoa. Did I lose it? Speaking of military spook obscurity.
Oh, they flagged you, John.
Wow. Let's see if it comes back. That is so weird.
The future, right?
Yep.
Where everything works.
Well, it's certainly frustrating here.
you had it. Was it right before you? Just before I closed the door. How many of you
There
are
we go.
having like?
I'm going to start over again. Here we go. Cryptography is a very hot issue in electronic civil liberties circles at the moment. After years of the deepest, darkest, never say anything military spook obscurity, cryptography is out of the closet and openly flaunting itself in the street. Cryptography is attracting serious press coverage. The federal administration has offered its own cryptographic cure-all, the Clipper chip. Cryptography is being discussed openly and publicly and practiced openly and publicly. It is passing from the hands of giant secretive bureaucracies to the desktop of the individual. Public key cryptography, in particular, is a strange and novel form of cryptography which has some very powerful collateral applications and possibilities which can only be described as bizarre and possibly revolutionary. Cryptography is happening and happening now. And that was written, actually presented in September of 1993 at the EFF-Austin Cryptography Conference, which we put together with National Electronic Frontier Foundation. And at that time, cryptography was still kind of thought to be something you couldn't do. In fact, there was some question whether any of us would ever have access to cryptography as individuals. And we were just in the middle of fighting that battle at the time. Now, as you know, we all do have access to cryptography. How strong it is probably debatable. But certainly tonight, we're going to talk, hopefully productively, about how everybody here in the room can at least have the opportunity, whether you use it or not, to leverage cryptography to protect yourself from surveillance. And with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Stephen Torrance, the man of the hour.
Thank you very much, John. So I'd like to start with, well, we've done announcements, so let's get past that. I want to sort of set the stage before we get into the hands-on portion of the night with just some introductory thoughts on this topic. I'm really tired of hearing this. How many of y'all are tired of hearing this? Thank you. That's probably why you're here tonight. When we decided that privacy was dead, we brought a lot of things along with it. And personally, I haven't decided that privacy is dead, but that seems to be the prevailing notion among the public these days, even in spite of the revelations that we had last year. But I think, and I agree with Laura Poitras, whose film Citizen 4 recently came out. Did everybody see that, by the way? Citizen 4 about Edward Snowden? Oh my God.
What?
Whoa, y'all.
Totally disappointing.
Yeah, I am disappointed. Go see that. I believe it's still in theaters. She was in the room meeting Edward Snowden and had a camera in Hong Kong when he presented everything. And it's just a fascinating film. And she believes, as I do, that privacy isn't really a matter of taste. It's not just like a preference that we have. It should be a fundamental human right, and it is a fundamental human right. And I think Jacob Applebaum, who's a member of the Tor project, he's actively contributing code to it and doing a lot of education on this subject, puts it really well. He says we're not really talking about privacy, actually. We're talking about autonomy, about our dignity, and about our liberty. So when we say privacy is dead, that's like we're saying liberty is dead. And I think it's important we reject that notion. I mean, that's what life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We kind of founded this country on those ideas. And if we say our liberty is dead, like what are we really saying there? So if we don't believe that, well, let's ask the practical question, right? How do we preserve this fundamental human right of privacy? And there are a lot of avenues to go about this, but I think as we heard from John, there's one that's very well understood to do this. And we know from Ed Snowden that encryption works. He was a contractor for the NSA. He had to protect a lot of very important information himself. Encryption works, and properly implemented strong crypto systems are one of the few things that we can continue to rely on. But when we hear that, this is often what I think of, right? The whole notion of, okay, I need to encrypt my stuff, I need to make my systems more secure is kind of overwhelming. A lot of these technologies have been around since 1993, and a lot of them haven't changed fundamentally since 1993 in the degree of their ease of use. And even for technically proficient users, it can be a daunting task to really implement a lot of these secure encrypted systems. Cory Doctorow, who is a former board member of EFF-Austin, put it very well in a article for The Guardian recently. It says, some privacy measures do require extraordinary technical competence. If you're Edward Snowden, with the entire NSA bearing down on you, you're going to need to be a real expert, and you're going to need to take some very serious precautions to encrypt your information. But the kind of privacy that makes you immune to mass surveillance and attacks of opportunity from voyeurs, identity thieves, and other bad guys is attainable by anyone. Tools do exist to make the protection of our privacy possible. We can do this, y'all. I believe this. EFF Austin believes this. And that's what we're going to do tonight, is really explore those tools and those methods for protecting our privacy and start to solve this problem of, how do we protect our fundamental rights from the bottom up. So coming up, I'm just going to introduce some methods and tools that exist right now, things that you can use to start thinking about the issue, and then software that exists to start using these methods. And then we're going to break up into kind of peer-to-peer workshops. We have a lot of talented people in the room. I'm looking at several of them right now. A lot of folks who live this day to day, who are encrypting their communications, encrypting their files, and using the methods that are necessary to really take back and protect this right. And we hope that y'all will share between each other the explorations that you've already gone into in this realm and start to explore these topics in depth, maybe install some of the tools that exist already. And then finally, we're going to come together at the end and share some of our takeaways, our learns, and maybe you'll end up at the end of this 2 hours a little bit farther along than you were at the beginning. So I want to start by introducing the concept of threat modeling. I see this as a way of breaking down the imposing problem, right, of what do you think about? Well, there are all these things to worry about, right? The NSA, the CIA, Google, what about some posh hacker group in North Korea, right, that just has an agenda against something, right? Where do I even begin to start approaching this topic? So threat modeling is a framework for thinking about this, for breaking it down and having an approach. And it starts with really 5 questions. What do you want to protect? Who do you want to protect it from? How bad are the consequences if you fail to protect it from them? How likely is it that you will actually need to protect that thing? And what methods exist that can help you avoid those bad consequences? So let's kind of go through these one by one. When we're thinking about what we want to protect, it's best to think in terms of assets. So some examples of physical assets would be like your body, right? You want to protect your body from harm. Your house, your possessions, your car, and even your mobile and desktop devices. And we'll leave those aside for the moment. Like, what are some examples of digital assets that you would want to protect in that vein? Just anyone?
Bitcoin.
Your Bitcoin, right? What are some other ones? Let's get a few others.
Bank account.
Your bank account info, right? Yeah.
Social Security number.
Yes, your identifiable information, right? There are a lot of very angry employees at Sony right now who've had a lot of that leaked. Some other examples, right? Your emails, your messages, your documents, your transaction history, your browser history, right? More and more of our lives happen online, right? The line has blurred between our physical and digital assets, but we're going to kind of keep it in the digital assets realm tonight. So the next step is thinking about who do you want to protect these things from? Once you've decided what the assets are, think about who might want to get them. And it's best to think in terms of potential adversaries, right? Who would want to get these things? Again, I'll ask for suggestions, right? Who would be some adversaries that would want to get, for instance, your transaction information?
Hackers.
Right, malicious hackers. Thank you, Todd. Who else?
The NSA.
The NSA. Yeah, very much so.
Hackers.
That's a way of. Todd puts it in the same topic or in the same bucket.
Divorce attorneys.
Right. Let's say you're going through a pretty nasty breakup, right? You've got someone who wants a detailed log of what you've done with your life. So these things can come from all angles, right? There are many, many potential adversaries that you can have. But it's worth it to think about who you are, right? Like what is your particular situation? So what are their capabilities, right? The government we know, like for instance, what capabilities does the NSA have?
All the capabilities.
Right, surveilling the entire internet. It's a pretty big capability. What capabilities does a corporation have, for instance? Let's say you're an employee at Sony.
Why wouldn't you just assume that they all have all the bad capabilities?
Well, we're pretty sure that Sony is not surveilling the entire internet, right? So, and let's say your employer probably doesn't, well, and maybe that's not a fair assumption, but just think about like what capabilities would another individual, like an attorney, have in that sense? What tools could they use?
Well, specifically, there happen to be large servers in Arkansas where all the data goes and then it's sold to the government. And there's also exchanges of information between the Canadian spies, the American spies. So to say that corporations don't have access to way more than you think may be a gigantic error. As a matter of fact, the NSA may even be buying information.
Potentially, yeah. So I think that's a really good thought, and I want to hold that. It's a complicated issue, right? We may not even know what all the capabilities are that our potential adversaries have. Yes, John?
Well, I think it's important to realize that the government is not somewhat just one big monolithic thing. It's a bunch of fiefdoms and islands and continents and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of different entities within the government. And if you're going to do a really good threat model, you probably you don't want to just say the government in general, but you want to think about the specifics. Like the NSA, for instance. The NSA, if you ever talk to NSA guys, they seem like they're pretty objective about what they're doing, and that you don't really feel like they've been a threat to you. But in fact, if they're funneling, like they work for customers, if they funnel information in the wrong way to the wrong person and it's misinterpreted, even though you may have, you may assume that you have nothing to be worried about, no concerns, you could actually
have nothing to hide.
The bug in Brazil, yeah, you can get caught in a trap that you didn't even realize could exist.
Right, and it's important to think too about other governments, right? We know that Libya, for instance, before it was a failed state, was sold surveillance equipment. So, the Russian government, right? The Chinese government, the North Korean government. So there are agencies within governments that might be more or less interested in you depending on who you are. Then it's important to think about like how likely is it that you'll need to protect this information, and it helps to think about, well, who are you? Are you a journalist going into to cover a protest, right? Are you working for the NSA? Are you working for a company that might be doing something nefarious, and you could potentially be a whistleblower, right? Like there are various reasons why you might not need to think about a particular threat or a particular adversary as much as another one, depending on what you have access to. The next thing to think about is like, how bad would the consequences really be if you fail to protect this information? So if I fail to protect my my friend network, for instance, on Facebook, like who I'm friends with, what are really the consequences of letting that particular part of my privacy go? And how do they compare to the consequences of letting my personal identity, my transaction information out? So it's important to sort of categorize and prioritize how bad these things are in order of that, how important they are to you. And if both of those things are important, right, it's very likely that that asset can be compromised, and the consequences are very bad if you fail to protect it. What methods are you willing to implement, and what methods exist to help you start to protect that? So this can seem kind of amorphous until we get into a few case studies, and this is again where I want to ask for some input here. So let's say you are a journalist covering a protest. Let's say you're covering the protests in Hong Kong or stuff going on in Ferguson or New York City. Let's start with the first question. What might be an example of an asset that you would have?
The people you interview.
Like videos of interviews? Okay.
The identities of the people who are protesting.
I like that as like you interview someone something's going on there. Okay, so who would you need to protect that video from? Who might want that video not to exist or not to get out onto the greater internet?
The target of the protest.
The target of the protest? So maybe it's like a particular corporation, right? They don't want their brand identity damaged by a video that paints them in a bad light. Okay? How likely is it that you will need to protect that information? Are you the only journalist there? Right? Are you the only person who has that video? How many people got that video? How bad are the consequences if you fail to protect that video? Right? Are you going to fail to expose that like a human rights violation or an environmental violation, something like that? And then what tools exist? So let's take that example. You have a video on your cell phone. What tools exist to make sure that cell phone video is secure from being remotely deleted by a malicious hacker employed by this corporation that is being protested against? Does anyone have any examples?
You could turn off your access to networks.
Okay, airplane mode, right?
Yeah.
What's another way that you could keep that video safe?
Back it up on a hard drive.
Copy it. In the back?
And onto an SD card and then iPads.
Air gap it? Greg?
Live stream that shit.
Yeah! Copy it a lot. Make sure it's impossible to delete all the copies of it. So that's it. Those are good examples. Let's do a couple more. Let's say you're a corporate accountant working for, I don't know, Enron. Right? What assets might you have that you need to protect? Financial tables, right? Yeah, the financial data. So who would want that not to get out, right? Who would be a potential adversary to that getting out?
Competition.
Yeah, the competitors might want it to get out, right? So
Boss.
what capabilities would your employer have for deleting that, or for knowing that you have that information and keeping you from releasing it? Like, what can Enron do? You're an employee working on their internal network, right?
They might remotely wipe your computer and your phone and whatever else they want.
Yeah.
If they've got access to do that.
Exactly.
They have the right to do it.
How bad are the consequences if you fail to report that? I think, so you get the idea. In each of these cases, the considerations are different. We'll do one more. So let's say you're a political campaign staffer for, a politician running for president. Let's just put it that way. Like, what sort of assets might you have that you need to protect? Donor information. Who has given money to that politician? Who would be a potential adversary? Who would want to get that donor list?
Strategies, documents, on strategies.
Maybe the opposition party would want to know what you're planning, who's funding you, right?
The IRS.
Journalists might want to get it. Yeah, the IRS. What capabilities would another political party have digitally, right, for getting at that asset? What do you think they might be able to do?
Insiders.
Right? They might plant someone. That's interesting, like social engineering, right?
Depends on if they're the standing president.
There you go. He might have other capabilities, or she. What are the consequences if you fail to protect that donor list from the opposition party?
There was actually a case in Texas about a year ago where, or it was about 2 years ago that the original leak happened, where the IRS leaked the donor list of a local operation here, a local group here in town, to an ideologically sympathetic website.
And what happened?
A prominent committee chairman in the Texas State House of Representatives called a donor to that local organization and threatened them because they had donated to said organization.
Wow. So you might lose your job at the very least. The candidate you're working for would lose, and maybe some other people would be harmed in various ways by the collateral damage. So the consequences can be pretty bad. But in any of these cases, it's always a different, the threat model is different in each of these cases. It's never the same adversary. It's never the same priority of information protection. So you can think of threat models for your own life, and that may be something to take away from here. What are the assets that you most value? who might be able to get those from you? What are the consequences if you fail? Kind of work through that for your own information. So I want to kind of switch gears here into another prep to give us some more ideas. Like threat modeling is one thing that we could discuss in a lot more detail. We could do an entire group workshop on that particular thing. But I want to kind of broaden the topic a little bit and go into ways that you can use the tools that exist now for encrypting your communications. And remember, security is never going to be perfect. You can only get more secure. You can never get secure, full stop. Starting with OTR. This is a very interesting technology that's available for many messaging platforms. Essentially, it's encrypting the communications over an existing chat service. So sort of like speaking Klingon over Skype, right? That's going to be gibberish to anyone who's looking at that call, even if they're recording it. But it does a lot more than that. It's actually encrypting each chat session. If you begin a Google chat session or if you begin a Facebook chat session and both of you on both ends are using OTR, that chat session can be encrypted, and not just encrypted for that particular session and then potentially decryptable later, but it's what's called perfect forward secret or perfect forward secure, where the information can never be decrypted after that chat session has ended. And you can use this on top of Facebook chat or on top of Yahoo chat or on top of Google chat. So I want to go through some apps that can begin to encrypt your communication channels, and these are all potential things that you could install tonight. You can download these things and start to communicate with each other sort of experimentally. Chat Secure is a way of using OTR on your Android phone. Text Secure is an app by Open Whisper Systems that uses its own method of encryption that's even more secure than OTR. It's currently Android only for the moment. Red Phone will allow you to make encrypted phone calls so that you can actually, and you can, by the way, you can follow along with all of these on pack.resetthenet.org, and we'll have that link in the post on EFF-Austin.org. But use these as a starting point. For the iPhone, Chat Secure is also available for it. So if you and your friend both use Chat Secure, you're both on Google Chat, or you use Jabber, you can begin to encrypt your communications between those devices. CryptoCats, it's interesting, like group messaging is one of those problems that OTR runs into. It's really not possible to do off-the-record messaging between more than one other party, but CryptoCat has a different method for doing that, and it's actually available for all platforms, Mac, Windows, Linux, iPhone, and Android. And then Signal will allow you to make encrypted phone calls to Android devices, or between an Android device and an iPhone, for instance, or between other iPhones. For your desktop, Adium is an awesome chat client. It will basically, you can log into anything that you use, even if you still use ICQ. How many people are still using ICQ? One person. You, sir, deserve another beer. It will allow you to encrypt over whatever chat client you're already using. The equivalent on Windows is Pigeon. And then on all of the platforms, you can use Tor. And I'm going to preface, I have an asterisk there. There's been some articles recently about, yes, theoretically it's possible to de-anonymize Tor traffic. It's supposed to be a completely anonymous way to browse the internet. I've seen conflicting stories about this, and I would highly encourage y'all to maybe have a topic on that to discuss like how secure Tor is, whether you've used it already, and what sort of the advantages and disadvantages are of using Tor. And then of course CryptoCat, so you can group chat with everybody on all the things. Yes?
When I was looking around at messaging systems in general, pigeons seem to be disappearing.
Is it?
It seemed like that, yeah.
Oh, that's good to know.
What's going on, it looks like, is Microsoft, who bought Skype, or somehow acquired Skype, is trying to just pull anything out that may have any code that's...
So Pigeon was able to cross-communicate with Skype, and they might have...
Or may have borrowed...
Well, that is news to me, so thank you. Well, if anybody knows of a Windows client that can do OTR, that would be a good thing to discuss too. And finally, if y'all want to discuss some deep dives, like you can really go deep into encrypting all of the things in your lives. Tails, for instance, is a live operating system that you can run off of a USB key that leaves no trace after you reboot it. It routes all of its web traffic over the Tor network, so nothing leaks out. Everything is encrypted. And it works on most computers, but big asterisk there. Most computers in different ways. PGP, which existed back in 1993. Public key cryptography, which Bruce Sterling mentioned, was around in 1993 and before. It's old, it's tried, it's true, it's tested, the code base has been gone over by security experts for 2 decades. It's a little tough to set up, but if you do it, it's one of the most secure ways that you can encrypt email communication and pretty much anything else that you want to share. And finally, if you are running an Android phone, sorry iPhone users, you can completely replace the firmware running on your device. Like if it came from Samsung or if it came from LG, there's probably stuff on there that you don't know about that is transmitting your data to many, many other places. So CyanogenMod is an open source replacement firmware for your entire phone.
Can it be used on iOS if you have a jailbroken iOS device?
I don't know. Can it? Are there CyanogenMod alternatives for the iPhone? I'm not aware of any.
I don't think that's possible.
Yeah, but that would be a good thing to discuss too. So if anybody in here has installed CyanogenMod, that would be a good start. So again, you can go, so all of the sources that I got this stuff is on the open web. pack.resetthenet.org is essentially a list of all of the tools that I just presented. EFF.org is the secure messaging scorecard. Will show you the security level of the tools you're already using. That's a really good thing to go through. And there are more being added to it all the time. And finally, if you want to read up on sort of the philosophy behind this, and again, an entrance into why these encryption tools are actually a good way to go, Freedom of the Press Foundation has an article called Encryption Works. That is an excellent overview of this topic. So I sort of want to sample that and set the stage. What we're going to go into next is selecting topics. Oh yeah, sure. I'll leave that up for a second. Sure. All of these are on EFF-Austin.org, by the way. If you want to just go to one website, that's got all the links in the post for this meetup. What I'd like to do next is we'll select our topics for what we'd like to dive deeper into. And for that, I want to bring up Greg Foster to explain how that's going to work.
Yes, switch over to that. All right. So lots of interesting things to talk about. Thanks to Stephen for that introduction. Let's give him a hand. So the idea right now is, how many folks here have ever done a bar camp or an unconference, or what is the contemporary terms for that now? Not a lot of people, really. Oh, come on now. All right. So, and this is one of the reasons that I'm concerned about this, because this is a participatory piece of the puzzle. And so I know you're all very smart people, and we're not up here to tell you how to do this stuff, because we don't necessarily know the best ways to do stuff. So we're here to learn as well. So, but the idea behind separating up into different groups to talk about different subjects, so one, we can cover a lot of ground at the same time. Two, you can go where you want to go to actually talk with the people that you want to talk with and learn from them, or to facilitate and coach one another in this piece of the puzzle. So basically, straightforward, we've got the ability to break up into 9 different tables. We'll assign like a color to each one of the different tables. But right now we need to talk amongst ourselves about what we want to talk about. So we want to designate 9 different topics to start with. We'll sit down 30 minutes, something like that. If we have more than 9 topics, we can do multiple rounds of this sort of thing. And so what we're going to do is identify topics and ideally identify a facilitator for each of the groups. Someone who can actually lead the discussion, or if you're just interested in something, definitely just throw that out there and we'll identify a facilitator for the group. So let's open it up. What do y'all want to actually talk about and learn about here? Let's say, okay, in the back, what do you want?
I am going to talk about to do.
Yep.
What I would like to do is I would like to make my computer as secure as possible, and if PGP wasn't cracked or compromised like Snowden, I think, said it was.
Yep.
I think PGP and Tor are the two most powerful tools.
Okay. All right. So why don't we have a Tor group, and we can talk there also about the viability of it and what the latest news is as far as the the attacks on de-anonymizing it. Tentatively, we'll do another one on email security, so PGP, setting up PGP. I don't know how many folks here use Thunderbird. I know how to set up an email on that. So we can do that sort of thing, just integration of PGP into your email client. So, all right, who else has one? Got one here?
I don't know if this is going to work, but I guess I'm less interested in the specific tools, and I'd be interested in a table that was talking about journalism and filmmaking and sort of the tools that apply to that.
Okay, sure. All right. Excellent. So journalism in the digital age. Yes.
Data encryption of your partitions or your whole hard drive.
Okay. All right. So hard drive encryption. And can I get your name? We're going to put your name on the.
My name's Chris.
Chris. So Chris on the journalism tools. And if definitely if you want to facilitate one of these groups, we're going to need that for each one.
Browser security.
Okay. Browser security. And do we want to say kind of include plugins, that sort of stuff that you can put in there?
Yeah.
That would be a very interesting one. What's your name? Matt. All right. What else?
Jigor?
Matt got mine.
Okay.
Okay.
Virus protection.
Antivirus? Okay. Antivirus. What else?
Text messaging.
All right. Yes.
Securing your communication at the network level so you can.
Ooh. Okay.
I don't know if this would fit in that discussion, but tools like Little Snitch for network monitoring would be an interesting thing to talk about.
Okay. Okay.
Social
What's your
networking
name?
security.
Okay. Social networking security.
Social networking security.
So what are you thinking there? Does that thing exist?
What could be like OTR over Facebook chat, right?
Yeah, your Facebook chat.
What we can do
Yeah.
while still participating in these networks.
Because I mean, if you actually know about how Facebook actually is these days, they're super anti-law enforcement.
Interesting.
Well, I don't know. We can have a whole conversation about that one. All right. Yes. Let's keep on going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Security in the cloud.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I use bot scripters, so.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely. Like if there's alternatives to the terms of service that we get with all these cloud providers these days that say, and we reserve the right to not take responsibility for our systems logging into your actual iron and the spot. Okay. What else? What other things do people want to talk about?
Cryptocurrency?
Cryptocurrency, financial security.
Okay.
Financial security?
How to actually keep those private keys private.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, mobile security.
Okay.
In what sense? In what sense? Securing what on your mobile? Securing like what on your mobile?
How to secure my phone in case I lose it, in case somebody takes it from me.
Need address.
Generally.
Okay.
Okay.
How I use it.
Okay. What else? Sure.
Identity theft and just keeping yourself safe from general online troublemakers.
Okay. That's a good one. What else? What are things people are curious about?
Securing group chat and voice conversations.
Okay. Okay. All right. So we got a good amount here, enough definitely for multiple rounds.
Facilitators?
So we got 9 plus, how many more here? 14. So we could do 7 groups to start with, 7 groups one round, 7 groups another round. And then we'll go through and identify facilitators for each one, but that's not even necessarily necessary. Like it's just a matter of people getting together. Then we'll lay out these different colors for one of the different tables, and you go to the one that you want to. And this is one of those situations, one of the beautiful things about an unconference type setting, one of the philosophies is that you vote with your feet. So if you're not getting it from the group, just go to another one. It's part of it. People shouldn't take offense about it. It's just the way that actually make it efficient. So let's identify facilitators for at least the first 7. Doesn't have to be in order, or whatever. So do we have anyone here with tour expertise who feels comfortable coaching some noobs? Oh man, come on now. We have to have some people who've got some tour expertise.
We got Mac over here.
Okay.
I'll do it. Can I do it?
Okay, so you all together, what's your name?
Do what?
Richard.
Am I
Richard.
in one group?
For now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Richard and Matt?
Yeah. But
Okay.
put both of us up.
Yeah. Definitely can have multiple. How about email security? If nothing else, I can fumble our way through that one. Chris is convenient on journalism tools, hard drives, encrypting hard drives. Anyone familiar with Tails or?
File vault on the Mac.
Or TrueCrypt.
TrueCrypt.
7.1.
Yeah, if you talk about another conversation needs to be had about TrueCrypt.
Is there a PGP section? Is that under email or is that?
We'll come back to that one.
Potentially, yeah.
All right.
Security, I think.
Oh yeah.
Is anyone comfortable talking about antivirus stuff? All right. So it looks like we're gonna mainly probably need to just
What was your
set
name?
up some tables.
You said antivirus?
No, let's encrypt the hard drive.
Okay. What's your name?
Robert.
Can you spell it?
Robert.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay. So no one on antivirus. Antivirus. Going once, going twice.
Are there any of maybe the secondary topics we could
Sure.
swap in for that one?
But again, we could just go. How many do we have now? Do we have 7?
Yeah.
You do that.
We just start with 7 and then swap out the last 2 topics.
Yep, and
Okay.
we can organize that as we go along. All right, so we need one more. So why don't we set it up this way? Let's see. Mac, you're over here.
Yeah.
So we'll do the light purple table over here, talking about Tor to start with. Email security, we're gonna do that over here, since that's where I'm sitting. Journalism tools, Chris is here. So this is the pink. Next, encrypting the hard drive, Robert. All right, in the back over here, about that one. Dark blue table.
This will be a discussion group.
All right, this is gonna be a popular
We got the
table.
beer table over there.
And browser security plugins, Matt. That's the light blue. Let's do that one over here. All right. And text messaging with Rebecca. Rebecca's right here. All right. So we're gonna go for about 30 minutes or however long makes sense, and just go to the table that seems interesting to you, vote with your feet, and let us know if you got any questions about not walking directly under the speaker. All right. Thanks, y'all.